there was something in Peter that recognized there was something in Jesus, that if he aligned himself under the word of Jesus, that he can rise out of the boat and rise above his circumstances and live a life of the supernatural. So this idea that actually there is something in him that recognized there was something in Jesus that allowed him to align himself. If I can just align myself under Jesus, then I'm destined to live a life above my circumstances, not below. I'm destined to live a life of supernatural empowerment, not below my circumstances, but actually above the circumstances of life. And I guess the first question tonight for us just to consider, after all these years of walking with the Lord, is there still something in you that recognizes there's something in Jesus, that if you align yourself under him, you're destined to live a life of the supernatural? I just want you to think about that and ponder that as we go through tonight, because everything we say tonight is about aligning ourselves under Jesus, aligning ourselves under who he is. Is there still something in you after all these years? I don't know how long you've been walking with the Lord. I'm sure many of you have been walking with the Lord a long time, but is there still something in you that recognizes there is something in Jesus, that if you align yourself under him, you can live above your circumstances and not below? It's not a guarantee against not getting the challenges of life, but it is a guarantee of walking in a covenant relationship with the Lord. They had this understanding that there were 4 levels of hearing something. And so the first level of hearing something was to hear a sound. That's the first level of hearing. So you hear a sound. The second level of hearing was not only to hear a sound, but to understand who was making the sound. But then there was a third level of hearing, was not only to hear a sound or to know who was making the sound, but it was also to know what that sound was. That's the third level of hearing. To hear a sound, to know who's making the sound, to even hear what the sound was. But then there was the fourth level of hearing. And the fourth level of hearing is the word Shema. And this level of hearing was not only to hear a sound, was not only to know who's making the sound, was not even just to know what the sound was, but it was then to shift and align your whole self under the sound that was being made. And that was the word Shema. So for God to hear something was one thing, but God's understanding of how we are to hear his word is not just to hear his word, but to align ourselves under his word. And that was the Shema. And so when the teachers of the law were asking Jesus, what's the greatest commandments? He starts off by saying, let me remind you something. It's not just about what the commandment is. It's about learning to align yourself under the command, under the sovereignty of the Father. And when you live under the sovereignty of the Father, that's when you are known as a covenant people of God. And so the most important word for the people of Israel was Shema, is to hear the word and to align yourself under the living word. What happened is when God, the one true God, Yahweh, led his people out of that environment into that wilderness towards the promised land, what he was doing, he was recalibrating their understanding of who they were. And God never promised them Mahat. He never promised them that the rhythms of life would be so in sync that they would never get any problems. See, friends, God never promises that we will not get problems. He never promises that we will not get challenges. You and I know that. You and I know that's not life. You and I know that life sometimes throws a curveball. You and I know, because we live in a fallen world, things happen. And God, even with the people of Israel, never promised them Mahat. He never promised them that things wouldn't be a challenge. But although he never promised them that things wouldn't go wrong, he promised them as a covenant people, Shalom, Shabbat. That's what he promised them. He never promised them Mahat, that somehow the rhythms of life would never throw any curveballs. What he did is that even though there would be curveballs in life, he promised them Shalom Shabbat. What is Shalom Shabbat? You would know this, that it's simply peace and rest in him. Is that when we live aligned as a covenant people under him, no matter what season we're in, whether we're in a flood season, whether we're in a receding season, whether we're in a drought, whether we're in a season of things being really tough and it feels like we're walking through the wilderness, when you're a covenant people, you are living under the promise of a Shabbat Shalom, a rest and a peace in God. And that's what God was teaching his people, that actually when we live under him, he is our security, he is our covering, he is our tabernacle, he is our shelter, he is our rest, he is our shalom, he is our peace, he is everything to us. Even though and some of you on the screen tonight, and I don't want to be insensitive, some of you on the screen tonight may have been in this last season walking through some challenges. And I can't sit here tonight and promise you the Christian life doesn't throw up challenges, because I don't think Jesus teaches us that. But what he teaches us is that actually, hey, in this world you will get many troubles, but listen, I've overcome the world. And when you live under a covenant of promise,